Happy Friday, everyone. So today it's the end of the day here. It's been a long week. I've been busy with work, but also getting really deep into this new AI tool. As you know, there's quite a bit of hype online. People are getting very excited using this automated image generation tool. And basically, what it is it's a text to image tool using natural language processing, to my guess, and pretty much tries to kind of like understand, what you're typing as prompts, and then it generates some sort of image. Actually, it generates 4 images. And then from there on, you can keep kind of like either enhancing the images or, making other variations and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna go into that pipeline in a second, but let's go step by step. And I think the difference of this video is this. So I checked, YouTube, trying to see what people shared so far. Most of the videos are talking about the user interface, which is Discord essentially, and how you can type, prompts and generate images and so on and so forth. And there are maybe a little number of, images that are more about the overall, idea of AI and the overall idea of AI making, generating images, using AI as a tool for that, and what it really means for artists and designers and for very near future, actually. So this is gonna be closer to the second type of videos, right? So if you want to use Midjourney, I think it's too easy to guess, right? So you just type things and things appear. I'm going to show you some examples, but beyond that, I think there needs to be a deeper discussion for the ways in which you might be, feeling. Meaning, are you trying to get into it? Do you want to try it? Are you thinking, you're missing something? So we kind of like need to answer those. And the short answer is you don't need to panic for anything. You don't need to feel that you're missing anything, because what I think is these tools were kind of like emerging recently in recent years, and they're going to be super, super accessible very soon, right? So having the access is fine. It's interesting. So you can get to play with it early, but there's no point of being worried about it, because what's going to matter in very near future is, again, just being that critical person, having that critical view and being able to use your insight, wisdom, and your experience to kind of like use these tools in the right way. So with that, let's look into the Midjourney. Actually, I tried to kind of like dig into maybe papers and some other stuff that is published about Midjourney, but what is Google returning so far is this Twitter page to start with, and like lots of images and some articles that people again wrote about Midjourney. And I can't say I'm 100% satisfied, because even the stuff that I found on Medium and some other blog sites is about, again, like how the tool really works and what sort of images people have been doing. I mean, that is kind of interesting, but because now everybody is doing images, and as you are generating images, you end up seeing like 10,000 images, as you're sitting in front of this thing. There's not much point of seeing like new images beyond, being inspired by them. So let's try to kind of like go into this thing and try to understand what it is. Okay, Midjourney. So it says new research lab. Okay, so there's some research going on, right, about AI and machine learning and training some AI models, exploring new mediums of thought. So I kind of like this because we are dealing with a text to image, tool. And then what's happening is, your conceptions, your ideas, and your thoughts, you are first converting them, or you're thinking about, you're imagining about some concepts, some words, which are your thoughts, essentially, according to this statement. And then you're trying to kind of like, see or capture, whatever the trained algorithm is returning you, right? So it kind of like takes the prompts, takes the words, And there's some sort of like machine interpretation of whatever you type, your prompts, which is your thought again, and then it's generating something. So, and the words are becoming this medium. So you're kind of like, submitting the words and you're getting pixels back, like patterns back, right? So I'm going to go into that again, like pipeline in a second. Expanding the imaginative powers of human species. I love this too. So, right. So it's about, it's not really solving a very serious problem, right? So it's not supposed to. It's a great statement that it's about expanding something, and I really find that this like imaginative, the term really accurate. It kind of, what's happening is because you end up seeing the images that you haven't seen before, right? So that's the promise about, that's been the promise about, any generative tool. If you think about generative design, going back to parametric design, going back to any sort of like, rendering tools and so on. So it was all about expanding, all this kind of like visual stimulus and so on. So you can kind of like, go and pick and, see new things and discover new ideas. The problem now is because you can create so many of them, you have to become a super strong filter. So you have to build these very kind of strong, picky, critical, intellectual, maybe, I don't know, depends on the context, filters that would enable you to both create. First, you need to understand the tool, how to use it, which prompts to use, how to build sentences, what so this thing has a syntax, right? So as you're writing the prompts, you have to be really careful about the syntax. And then it becomes this kind of like, negotiation. You're trying to steer it, in a way so that it generates the image that is closer to your will, or you get already lost because, it gives you an image which is not what you thought about, but it's more interesting maybe than what you thought about at the first place. So anyway, for that reason, I find this like expanding the imaginative power, that's a very kind of like head-on explanation for this tool. Great. Okay, so how do you apply? You apply to beta here, and then it opens, I think, a page here, right? So you type the email, and then, you can put, I think, your Instagram page. It's kind of like optional. I recently checked DALL-E 2 as well. So that has a very kind of, similar application process that is asking for LinkedIn, URL as well. So I applied to this first. I didn't hear from them for Midjourney. I think maybe in 6 days. I applied again with another email, and then I got the first one. So I didn't have to wait that long to get in, around 1 week. But as I got it, I started looking into what people have been doing and posting. And I have been away from like social media, maybe like 9-10 months by now. But I'm getting back into it, especially in terms of, like professional posts and discussions as much as I can. And the first thing I did with Midjourney was, okay, like I played with it maybe 30 minutes, and then I posted my super, I would say, critical, prompt saying, okay, here we go, AI bandwagon. And again, I'm going to come back to this as well, because I said, okay, I'm going to let this system generate like, a crowd, which is, collectively doing something, which is, we had in my mind, we had the, hype and, in the history of design about parametric modeling, generative design algorithms, simulations, volumetric modeling, voxels, 3D printing, robotic arms, AI, and, so there's always, and there's always two parties in my mind. Like one is like the smaller portion is being able to be like super critical, so they really deliver value. And I would say 80% is like noise, right? So I said, okay, I'm gonna kind of like poke some, poke some minds also, touch, maybe also touch some hearts, right? At the same time, and see what people are gonna kind of like come back to. So this was like my 2 words, AI bandwagon. Okay, so I posted this. I actually typed this in Midjourney, and I got my results. And then I I posted it on LinkedIn. All right, so and I said, hey, I generated some AI bandwagons for all of us, and I picked my favorite, and I'm already in it, right? Because I'm using it. So sometimes people think when I'm critical and when I'm posting something critical, they think like I'm opposing it. I'm not opposing it. So that's the tricky thing, right? So it's about, you have to have like, it's a very thin line. So you have to be like super precise, very descriptive, very intentional with what you are doing. Otherwise, like, anybody can type, anybody can generate things, and then so what's the point? If you are using this, I want to hear your thoughts, and I want to hear, why you're doing something in a specific way and not in any other way. Okay, so I picked my favorite, and I'm already in it, because they're like wagons. So, I'm joining one band. The cool thing is that I can generate infinitely many of them, so nobody will be left out. So this was a little bit, touching upon this kind of like fear of missing out. You have this for everything, as you know, in finances too, but also about tools too. So like, you should never FOMO. You should never have like fear of missing out. If you miss something, there will be something else. If you jump on it and, if it doesn't work, there's going to be a next one. This applies to, like Midjourney. This applies to in parametric design, to every tool, and so on and so forth. And I said, okay, let's cut to the chase, and can you help me figure out whether or not these images are meaningful, valuable? Could you guess how engaged, inspired I was as I was doing them, generating them? And do you know how I felt after I was done? And when do you decide you are done anyway? And what would the next steps be with these images? This is very crucial, right? So I asked this to a couple of people, and they got offended for no reason, because it's okay if you say it's useless, but they didn't even say that, right? So some people said, oh, like, why are you asking this? And I'm okay. Well, I'm not gonna. I just asked because people are asking you, you're responding. So I said, okay, what is the next step? And I don't know, they didn't like that question. So I would say, if somebody, my suggestion, if somebody asks me, I say, okay, here is what I can do. I can use it as a texture map, make displacement maps, generate meshes, and I just look at them and I like them. You don't have to, right? So you can also say that too, or you can say they are utterly useless. They are utterly useless, but I learned something while doing this. So it's just about being like sincere, right? So or you can say they are total failure, right? So they're totally failure. And I think that's a very great answer. Failing is great, right? Anyway, so I have these images, right? And I got a really nice, so these are like bandwagons, like these humanoid creatures with screens and electronic parts, and maybe a little bit also touching the nature, like they are becoming like bandwagony, they're like large. I see like some like little beetle parts, bus portions, and so it's kind of like interesting, just taking two words and picking those. But again, while getting here, your intention is important too. So the nice thing about this post is I get around like 11 point something, like 11,000 plus impressions, and okay-ish feedback from people, but it was a nice engaging discussion. And if we jump to this, the Midjourney page, and again, I'm going to go through the pipeline right after this one. And so this is one of the images that I showed you which was on the LinkedIn page. So this is what happens. This is where the images are being stored as you generate them, right? So in other videos, let me jump here for a second. So people are kind of like putting these prompts, as you see right now, and generating these images in the Discord, interface. So we can check here. Somebody said, I don't want to kind of like go into too much detail, but for who knows what's going to happen with the, copyright purposes and so on. But anyway, this is pretty much what is happening in the Discord side. People putting prompts, and images are being generated. And then you can kind of like on your page, you have them in a kind of like historical, let's say log. So if I go to this image, I can see that I created this on the 24th of June. This is the dimensions of the image. The nice thing is you can go like 16 by 9 being the 1024. So you can go around like 1,700 plus pixels wide images. So that's kind of like pretty impressive. And the nice thing is you can track this back. So meaning when I put the prompt AI bandwagon, like 2 words, there was a parent to this. And I just clicked the parent, which was this image, right? So it was smaller. And then I saw this one, which is on the top right corner. And I said, this is interesting. So I'm going to enlarge that. And then I enlarged that, which is the image that you saw a moment ago. But also this was kind of like an offspring of a previous image, which is this one. And this was also coming from the very first image that, the AI tool generated. So when I typed AI bandwagon, these were the first four options, the algorithm presented me. If you run it again, the question is it going to generate the same thing? I haven't tried it yet. I can. But what my guess is this, because people are using this thing like crazy, I think it is learning on the way, right? So I mean, this is the thing, because probably it was pre-trained by using I don't know how many million images, and now as people are using it, I would assume it to or the developers to use this kind of like input to either enhance or change a couple of things in the tool. So this was the first image, meaning I looked into this 4, and then I picked one, and then I clicked on it, upscaled it, and then I made variations of that, and so on and so forth. So here is the workflow for this thing, which I think, I kind of like mapped this out by just playing with the tool, right? So there are more details, but this is, I think, a simple overview of the workflow. And I think it's important to look at this, because then you understand what's really going on and which steps you can take as you're using Midjourney. So essentially what's happening is you put the text in, which is this light blue colored circle. And then the last thing you get is the image output, right? So you can just put it that way, and that's fine. That's the short description of what Midjourney is doing. So, but the text input is really tricky, right? So because you can use text in different ways, you can type your prompts in different ways, and the syntax or the way you type them really matters. The order of words, adjectives, if you're using a comma or not. If you're using plus, it means something else. So you have to experiment all of those things. But at the same time, the trained model knows about paintings. It knows about painting styles, render styles as well. For designers, this is for designers and visual artists. So you can tell it to make the scene look like an octane render or a keyshot render, right? And you can type like focal depth, macro, like photography terms, or like cinematic terms like dramatic, grotesque, and so on and so forth. So that is, so you have the content, which it can be an object, it can be a story, it can be an event, it can be figures, and so on and so forth. But also you can talk about the, what's happening, like the context of the image. So you can include here, I was trying to, show that you can have the description. You can talk about the properties or features of the thing, right? So you can say, an umbrella with, strawberry handle. That's fine. So it's going to try to create that, right? So it has a part, which is the handle, and then, it's made of strawberries and so on. And then render style, which I just kind of mentioned. And also you can talk about the image properties, right? So you can use aspect ratio 16:9, and then it's going to create, this 16:9 image. So, and there's more than that actually, right? So as you play with this thing, you can change your text input, and then it goes into this black box, right? So that's the portion that we don't know about, like how long it was trained, that this trained model, what your prompts are running in. So there's something about like natural language processing there for sure. There's the issue of semantics, right? So like it's trying to make a sense of the words that you're typing, and it's really interesting because even to two people, the same word doesn't mean the same thing. So then I mean, you have to kind of like step back and think about this a little bit. And then also there's of course things about like pattern recognition, right? This thing is built upon that, right? So because every object, every name, every prompt, every figure, everything that you're referring to is a pattern for this tool, and it's just trying to kind of like paint those patterns in the right place, in the right context, depending on your prompts. And then comes the 4 images, as you said. So as I said, not you, but as I said, and then with those 4 images, there are kind of like, I think 3 options that you can take. One is you can just say, okay, none of these work for me, so redo it. Or if you like 1 or 4 of them, that 1, 2, or 3 or 4 of them, you can upscale as many as you want. And then once you upscale them, you have 2 options. You can either upscale to max, or you can make the variations of the thing that you upscale. I like that cycle because if you make variations after upscaling, upscaling helps the AI tool add details into what you're trying to create. And then your next variations will have, some of those details. It doesn't retain everything once you make the, variations, but it's still adding those details. And then once you make those variations again, you get 4 images. And it's a refined expansion. It was talking about like expanding the imaginative world of humans' power and so on. So that's what happens. So the first 4 images are always surprised because sometimes get something very close to what you want to get. Sometimes it's like, oh, what is this, right? So it has nothing to do with it, which is a surprise with what you want. So just redoing is kind of like repeating that surprise for yourself until you get something satisfactory. And once you upscale to max, it's pretty much your image, and you can do whatever you want. So when you first play with this, it's really satisfactory, but it kind of comes, I don't know, like okay-ish after a while, which is great, right? Every tool should be like that. If you get super excited, then you're enchanted with it, you're blind. Like, I mean, you can generate like 1 trillion images with this, conceptually, and then what are you gonna do with that, right? So that's the question. Well, good luck, creating 1 trillion images, and I don't know if there are enough GPUs on Earth for that, but anyway, we will do the math later. But what happens is, as you become critical, your eye grows critical, and then you find the right prompts to feed into this software, and then you start enjoying it. But then, there is like this cycle here from upscale to upscale max is not too satisfactory because you want to see more. And then the other I think the dissatisfaction was for me when I upscale and when I want to make variations, I wanted to kind of like retain more of that in the variations, but things get lost again, and it maybe creates like the variations are sometimes too similar, sometimes like not similar enough. So, and you cannot decide about that like spectrum, right? So the bandwidth, like you cannot define where steer this thing, towards your will yet, though. So we're gonna see what happens next. But this is what I kind of like deciphered from working with this. It's kind of like it's explicit, but drawing it makes it, I think, a little more explicit than what it is. And let's go back to our discussion right here. Yeah, and as I said, this post got like lots of response, and then actually that was another post that I made just a day ago, just a day before this one. So I was talking about parametric design and computational design, and saying like people always got lost a little bit in the hype. You can read the full text, maybe pausing here. I don't have to read it. But I was again trying to say what I just said, since the beginning of this video, saying, okay, if you are not critical, if you are not creating value, if you are not driven to create something meaningful, probably you're creating noise. Maybe not, but most probably you might be creating noise. So I got like around 13.8 thousand, impressions for this one. Great feedback, 45 comments back and forth. Like some people got, of course, like a little pissed off with the post and so on. But here is the deal. And I again followed up with another post yesterday. Uh, Actually, it was today. I'm sorry. So I said, okay, Dolly versus Midjourney. This is like last year and this year. Grasshopper versus Dynamo. Generative Components versus Katya. Maya versus 3ds Max. Crytek versus Unreal Engine versus Unity. You can add Houdini, Blender, Cinema 4D, AutoCAD, ArchiCAD. You know, like you can't keep expanding this. This is like versus this versus that, that versus this, and so on. So, and I was saying, okay, what is the constant here, right? So some things change, but something remains constant. Some people replied, I haven't looked into them yet, but the constant is easy. So I'm going to talk about that constant and why you shouldn't be that scared of AI and ML tools. And then we're going to wrap this thing up. All right, here we go. This is a presentation that I gave in 16th of March, 2019. So this precedes Dolly first version by 2 years, Midjourney by 3 years, and you know many other AI tools that emerged within the last three plus years, so 3 years and 3 months, right? And I was talking about AI, I was talking about machine learning, and you know, I said, okay, I'm going to give you 7 tools, actually 7.5, so you can use data and not be scared of AI in your work. And I'd like to repeat that here. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is, okay, everybody's asking, oh, is AI going to replace artist, designer? Not a good question, not a very good question. Okay, I think one way, you know, this is because this is the question people are asking, does AI do something X better than humans? And let's say, can cars, you know, drive better than humans? This is what it's coming to, right? So this kind of, or, you know, if Midjourney can or cannot make art better than humans. So what is this about, like car driving itself? Okay, you have to avoid a collision, which is about like, you know, decision making. And, you know, we have this like kind of like moral question about, you know, like what happens when something is trying to, you know, avoid a collision. You would remember the very famous, you know, train track question, in which train is going towards, you know, like a child, let's say, or a pregnant woman, one person, and then you have the ability to change the, you know, the track, the train track. So then, but on the other side, 4, you know, workers are working. So you end up, you know, the train ends up killing 4 people instead of a pregnant woman or a child. And so, which is the right thing, which is the wrong thing, right? So this is about the moral question. So the same thing goes back to, okay, if I create an image with Midjourney, is it my image because I typed the, you know, the words, or is it, you know, let's say you use the style by Lebbeus Woods, you know, the architect, and say, oh, that would he late, you know, Lebbeus Woods should have owned some of the, you know, the copyright and so on. Okay, so well, this is gonna go, right? These questions are kind of like not solvable for me. But you know, what is designers and painters, you're going to say, okay, how can we make AI a better enabler? Okay, good question. So that's why the Midjourney, the title in the Twitter page, makes lots of sense. This is like, okay, we're giving this to you to imagine, because the one very crucial thing about Midjourney is it wants to be imaginative and expand the imagination. And even the prompt starts with that /imagine da 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 da, right? So that's like, it's pretty kind of, in my mind, very clear. Like the intention is really clear, and the question is right. So tools are enablers. And the funny thing is, what I'm enjoying now today is that finally we have some names for those tools, because people were referring to any, like, you know, ML algorithm or, you know, like trained model as AI or ML. AI is going to do that. As well, I was like, okay, there's not one AI. It's about saying software is going to model. Well, you know, it's not like that, right? So software and AI. So we are going to have these tools, and tools are going to have their names and intentions moving forward in a much, much clearer way. So And I think this is, we can approach the problem as a humorous way too. Like we can say, okay, do bikes ride better? So imagine an automated, bike riding itself. There's no point, right? So there's no, well, if we are talking about an exercise bike, as you see on the left side, if it is riding itself, there's no point to it. That you're not getting any exercise. And if you're talking about a mountain bike or a road bike, you're not getting any experience beyond or besides the exercise, right? So if you're not really domain specific, questions become irrelevant. So we cannot use Midjourney to discuss it, stuff about AI. We can only use a portion of like image making process and say what Midjourney is bringing or what is really missing in it. Okay, the second one, some people refer this in their YouTube videos, and again, I've been using this. I don't know, more like it's been more than a decade, but hopefully it's going to be 2 decades very soon that I've been using this advice. We have to be quality driven. Like we have to be working on, but also looking beyond. Oh, we can generate any image anytime. It takes 30 seconds. It's great. Well, so what? Then you can use so many 30 seconds in a day to generate lots of images that you forget about, after lunch or dinner, which happens. Believe me, when you create like 149 images one day, then you forget about 20 of them because they're not important, and then hundreds of them are and then 15 of them are like slightly good, and so on. So you have to remain and super be critical about creating values. So, well, what are the values, right? So we can talk about values. This is a slide that I use like a million times. It's very, very important. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to keep it short. In 1514, Albert Dürer said, "What is beautiful, I do not know." Okay. And he made this engraving around the same time. And this is showing all the tools of measurement, all the tools of like computation and building and so on and so forth. So this is the kind of like rational world, the world of making and thinking, and everything is, let's say, in place, and you have all the tools to make it precise. But it's about beauty, right? So he's kind of like the value, the thing he's seeking is beauty, and like having the precision. Does it really create beauty? There's a paper about it that I'm going to talk, in one of the other videos. But the short answer is not necessarily. Again, like being efficiency driven doesn't yield the best human values all the time. Okay, so the third one, you have to trust your guts. So should you be afraid of like AI and so on? Were you afraid of parametric design, modeling tools, and so on and so forth? Well, if you check these, skills needed from Forbes, which I again showed, many times, as there are like these 10, like skills, which are all soft skills. And Forbes has been publishing this since like, I think 90, oh my God, years. Okay. 2018 or 2017. I went back in time. I'm sorry, 2017 or 2018, and they're still publishing it every year. So when you look into it, look at the first 3: complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, and so on and so forth. So that goes back to asking if AI is creative or not. So this is another chance for you to evaluate that question and ask it in the right way. The other thing is, what Midjourney cannot deal with is the ambiguity, right? So it is kind of like, it's, when you put the prompts, actually, I should try Duck Rabbit on that, right? So it returns something, but it doesn't exactly know what it is returning. And then again, it cannot retain the, let's say, the properties that you want to see as it goes through the other cycle. And this is from, like years ago, I was looking into this Duck Rabbit in a let's say, imagine this, the trained AI model. So it can do both because it's trained on these things, but it cannot see the crocodile necessarily. So pattern recognition, actually, it can see it now probably, or it will see it very soon, I'm very sure. But human vision will have something else to see right after this is done. Midjourney is creating interesting images because you are the one looking at that. Okay, the next thing, being agile, right? So the trends come, trends go. You're going to forget about Midjourney in 5 years. your students will won't even hear about that, right? So we had generative components in 2004. Do you remember it? No. Have you heard about it? No. This was predecessor of it was released before Grasshopper. Even we know the name, right? Grasshopper, like the trial version was out in 2007. Generative components was out around 2003 or like 2004, right? So around those years. So, again, I talked about the trends. So the design methods will keep coming and going back, and then you are going to, find something more interesting, more engaging, and you're going to kind of like jump to that maybe. But again, the problem will be creating value. So here, I'm testing a, non-existent material which wasn't released to the market yet. And it was, like great experience, kind of like trying to get an understanding of that material. About AI, is it going to replace some jobs? Yes, it will. The short answer is that. But there are 2-3 kind of like outcomes of that can be good or bad, depending on how the world and the big corporations handle this. But all of us should plan for free time somehow, right? So because all these repetitive tasks or all concept creation, right? So we'll get more support again from AI and ML and similar tools. But then again, the people who will be driving these will need to be super, super strong, people with like critical visual skills, intellectual skills, and ability to kind of like understand how tools work, what they can do, and what they cannot do. This is really important. That's how you become a strong, let's say, computational designer per se, if you understand what computers cannot do, right? So that's one of the interesting things about the fields. And this is the HAS, 5.5, let's say, the point to deal with like data and AI, finding an inexhaustible question. So it will keep you moving. I enjoy like looking at Midjourney because it can do some of the stuff and it cannot do some of the stuff it will do. Like AI driven, image creation tools will be able to do some stuff, but still they will fail in generating some other things that humans do, right? So I'm not necessarily talking about like oil painting texture and so on. That is obvious, right? So even you can generate that by using like sprayed oil paints from a machine to a canvas from like in an AI driven way. It doesn't matter. So your engagement is really important. So, and I was lucky enough to work on during my PhD dissertation. I worked on this kind of like image making in which the system was kind of like driven by human, and one kind of like was able to, let's say, draw and pick and choose shapes and so on, while using the computer as a way to capture and reiterate the hand drawn, let's say, figures. So in a way, I argued that, okay, my inexhaustible question here is, computers or AI can generate images, but it cannot grant me the same experience of image creation process, right? So it's my satisfaction doing this painting is like beyond everything. Whereas like Midjourney, it's fine, it's interesting, but you get bored, I don't know, like after a while. And also the other thing is, okay, so this is a great discussion. I didn't know if I would be able to do this video. I haven't been posting for ages. It's been, I think, more than a year. I had videos in between, but they were kind of like shot before. So it's really important to share these thoughts, ideas, experiences. So you have to teach, you have to discuss why I'm doing this is exactly for that. I think there are a lot of people who are curious about these tools and they're kind of like panicking or they're kind of interested, but I just want to say it is going to be okay, right? So, and just take this as your power, right? So just if you're interested in, wait for your turn, try to get into it, try to use it, reach out to people, ask questions and get answers. And then, and then do it for others, right? So once you get strong, once you know about things, just kind of like, become a resource for others, right? So maybe a good example for that is, I spent quite a bit of time in the last 5 years, previous 5 years, maybe, meaning, like if you rewind back like a year and a half, if you forget about the COVID, I'm talking about that 5 years before COVID, just spending lots of time thinking about like additive manufacturing parts and how to rethink about things just kind of like reconceptualizing, let's say, shoes, right, in this instance. So that was about like digging into a good question, but at the same time, again, like using it to empower other people. So I ended up running this workshop at MIT. We were a couple of people from New Balance walking into MIT in 2019, January 2019. So it's been 3.5 years. And, we kind of like thought about, we thought about using these, emergent generative tools, and then, ask kind of data to design questions, how to convert things, and, share these things with these people. So kind of like it was a limited selective course. We thought a lot, we learned a lot from the students, and it was a great discussion. So it's really important to share what you know about these tools, and hopefully that's what I was able to do in this video. And yeah, I just got this text from the from the description of the conference at the time in 2019. So data AI is important. Data is important. Training AI models, ML models are important because somebody thought, it's important to do so, right? So you may agree or not agree with that, and it's totally fine. So I'm thinking like the description of that event from 2019 fits onto the discussion that we are having today about Midjourney. Technology-driven advancements, right? This is one of them, but technology is an enabler, and it's going to be continuing to be that way, right? So what is important is how you take the technology and how you use it, how you use Midjourney in a meaningful way, right? So please show us. And the description of the conference was talking about a data-driven mindset. No. Data is what you want to see. Data is what you write about it. Data is your way of describing something. You have to have a quality-driven mind, and you can support it with data. So here you go. You can use it. You can use Midjourney, to generate something that has certain qualities that we cannot find elsewhere. You can generate some meaningful visuals. You can plot some meaningful workflows for your, let's say, creative team to use this tool in a meaningful way. And quantify the value of good design. Well, there will be always mishaps and good news. You don't have to. This is about like value of good design is very hard to quantify. Okay, so it's really interesting. Like, and this kind of like contradicts a little bit with what I do maybe on a daily basis, because I look into data-driven processes. I look onto data, and I help produce super well-performing products, right? So you have to find a way to quantify, the performance. But what I'm trying to say here is, for instance, for Midjourney, it's hard because I can show you an image, you would hate it, I love it, right? Or vice versa. Or, a lot of people create noise, they're happy. A lot of people create amazing images, maybe they are barely seen, right? So that's why you don't have to quantify all portions of quality, okay? And you cannot anyway. So quality, performance, you can only quantify a portion of it. The rest remains ambiguous. And that ambiguity is actually called design. That ambiguity is called value. So you have to discover that, you have to work on it, and you have to make it real. Will AI add value? Big question. And actually it was the title of a YouTube video. I'm going to put the link for that, maybe. From a good designer. Design Theory is the name of the channel. He is an insightful designer. I love that. I feel really good that instead of somebody who is kind of like enchanted with these tools, he is getting these clicks, and and he's kind of like reflecting his insight about these subjects. So he was asking, the title of the video is, okay, will AI replace designers or artists, whatever? Okay, same question, from like 3+ years ago. Will AI add value or replace you? Okay, so ask about it. Okay, like what is the worst thing that may happen? Let's say AI will replace you. This is my sketched out answer. Yes. Well, you're gonna find another job. I'm sorry, if you have to pay the bills, you know, you're going to find another job. That's the answer. It applies to me too. If I get replaced by AI, yeah, well, you know, go fish somewhere, or, you know, take a long break. Maybe that's a good idea. Or if they're not going to replace you, well, your job is going to change, right? The nature of your job is going to change anyway, because these AI tools are supposed to automate so many ridiculous things that you have been doing with your hands and so on. So there's no reason for that to happen anymore, right? So you either find a new job, or you slightly shift the, you know, the definition of your job. So that's the result. So be ready for this. Be ready for things to change. It's going to change. But if you're listening to this, if you're watching these videos, if you're kind of like trying to find your way, that's already enough. That's already enough. You don't have to have the answers. You just need to ask the questions, right? So if you're asking this question, you are in a good spot. So don't worry about it. So, and the other portion of this discussion is, okay, AI will add value or is going to kind of like replace you kind of question. As I said, it's going to like both is going to happen, right? So it's going to add some value and it's going to replace some jobs. But again, as I said, you know, it's going to be the repetitive tasks. But again, then you will need to find new people, or you personally will need to kind of like enhance some other skills to, you know, be a strong player in the field. And we will need to be the ones to decide, right? So of course, these tools, again, Midjourney, Dolly, and so on, they are trying to restrict the use of these tools for like bad purposes, right? So some people may go and, you know, generate some disturbing images, or, you know, like maybe make propaganda for, you know, some unhealthy thoughts and so on and so forth. So there's kind of like limitations to those things. And so it's better to amplify the strength and creative nature of these things. And it's going to only happen by, you know, the more people, more creative people, more, you know, humanistic people to join this journey. So we have to do it, right? So you have to do it. We have to be the driving force for that. And actually, that's the last thing, right? So don't step back. Don't be scared with all this hype. If people are kind of like posting these images every day saying, oh my God, this is amazing, and like thousands of people are liking these images, it doesn't matter. That's not the value. Quantity never has been the value, right? It's never popular doesn't mean good, okay? Don't forget that. They are very different things. They are very, very different things, okay? So concentrate on what you're doing. Please draw a logical path and peaceful path for yourself, for AI, and try to follow that. That's what you essentially need to do about this subject. And with that, I would like to thank you. Maybe just have this, you know, AI bandwagon picture here. But again, being honest is fine as long as you know that you are jumping into the stream of hype for a while, but you will never use those tools in the wrong way, and you will never lose yourself while trying to leverage your work. Create meaning, create value, and please remain healthy. Thank you so much for watching this.